When you talk about ARPGs, one thing is certain. All of the women you are interested in will leave the room, but if they stayed, they'd be aware that Last Epoch has some of the greatest potential for this genre since Path of Exile. Now, this is to say the game isn't actually finished yet, except for the intensive needing to buy it. Get the wallet out, bitch, it's paying time, and you might be thinking, Seer, should it be game playing and reviewing time then? And I would say, hey, if they can get money for an unfinished product, so can I. But there's plenty here to unpack already. The game's been released, in quotes, for a while now, and spoilers, I really enjoy this game. Except for the faces on the characters, like, what am I looking at here? Actually, the better question is, what is she looking at here? Anyway, Last Epoch is your newest complicated as fuck ARPG on the market, probably inspired by Path of Exile mostly, but throw in a dash of Chrono Trigger for all the chrono triggering you do here, and you've got a pretty unique setting to work with. Oh yeah, before we begin, let's introduce the sponsor of the video, Fuck All. Fuck All is a global leader in the industry of how many games are released completed anymore, with their most recent project being Overwatch 2. Many greedy bastards work here. Thanks again to them for sponsoring today's video. Anyway, Last Epoch is pretty epic with a story that takes you through the same locations but during different periods of time. Because of this, you get to experience the growth and death of the land, which is quite interesting. Let's take it from the top, so come over right here, step into my shoes, let me get out of them first, fuck's sake. Okay, here's where we begin. You boot up the game, get to the character select, click the character creator, typical, always the same, you know, and are presented with 5 classes: the mage, the rogue, the primalist, the acolyte, and the sentinel. Well, 2 of these are what I've come to expect, but someone opened up the fancy thesaurus for the other 3, I suppose. But to be honest, I can spot the kind of shit I like to play right away. This guy here must be able to hit the ground really hard. Plus, I like this notion of throwing animals at things, so okay, let's do this. Spoilers, you can hit the ground very hard. Perfect. So, Beware My Bear begins his journey with a dream, I guess, just a dream, and a big weapon as well, so cool. Each separate class has a unique motivation for beginning their quest, and the Primalist is fighting to avenge his entire people's death. Like, fucking hell, this guy is raw. Right away, the game is visually pleasing, because it's actually made recently enough to enjoy shaders and higher quality models and lights, you know, the staples of today. And combat, for as basic as it is at this exact moment, feels nice. The enemies can inflict damage to me, so it's not thoughtless as I kill them. They don't fold with only one blow, so I have to watch what I'm doing. And with a quick level up, you instantaneously start fearing that this game is inspired by Diablo 3 as you unlock a skill that goes directly to your ability bar. But luckily, while the game gives you immediate access to all your class skills by simply leveling up enough times, it's ridiculously customizable. So we'll be moving ahead slightly, but system discussion is important for a game review, unless you're here to just hear me swear, which is fine, I don't care, whatever gets you coming back. But for those interested in deep mechanics and dynamic build choices, Last Epoch is the game for you. Normally, there's typical ways for designing skills in these type of games. You either get a tree, a table, a board, any sort of long device which fans out to reach stronger skills and more potent abilities, or you're simply given your skills to swap them around as you see fit. This game, on the other hand, said fuck it, every skill gets a skill tree. And this really is fun because there's a lot of preemptive planning you can do. Since the game outlines the macro concepts surrounding your offense and defense, like damage types, physical and magical skills, armor and resistance, all the classics, you're able to make a rough outline of where you want to get. Additionally, since you're hard locked to 5 hotkeys at a given time, and by extension 5 skills, you have to narrow down your selections. You're probably going to want a mobility option, a defensive button, and then a few synergistic attack skills. This rocks my socks, I do say, unlike Path of Exile, which stills my shoes, I do say, where your skills come from gems that you socket onto gear, and as a new player you don't have any clue which skills even exist or what will synergize with skills you like, or if you'll even have the gear with the correct links to make a build you want to use. You can instead just look at the whole class as it is. Skills being based around your character is a superior way to design, in my opinion. Now, this is not to say that Last Epoch is that simple, far from it. I mean, we're now talking about 5 skill trees at a given time, plus a passive skill tree where you can spec into a special subclass tree as well. I have seen less trees at the Lowe's Garden section, but I can't lie, I do like a good tree to play around with. And for a game with 7 skill trees per character, you'd think it would get really confusing to make something top tier, and yup, but that confusion is accepted because it encourages you to experiment and try things out. Respecking is actually very accessible, but it keeps getting updated and reworked as the patches go on, so who knows what it'll end up being like. At the moment, I've seen worse ways of going about this. But anyway, back to our barbarian. I played for a while, gaining skills and getting buffer, got some wolves, picked up a bear, read through pages of text regarding my skills, and really, I was having a great time. Combat is punchy and always presented me with the possibility of dying, which is ideal. I capitalized that to emphasize in my pronunciation that being able, also capitalize that, to die is essential in an ARPG because it makes you think about your defenses. If the possibility of death exists only at the very end of a game, that's shittily balanced in my opinion, because then it makes both the early game not investing enough and makes the end game way more unexpected and tedious. From me, Sears, dumb guy, I feel like if you want your game to have hardcore elements, then you have to make it difficult for the whole duration. And this game got much closer to that idea in my opinion. And that reminds me, there are some difficult bosses to take down. Hell, as of the recording of this video, the final boss was mentioned as being a right pain in the brain by several people in global chat. And when I got there, it wasn't easy. I lost several times, and I never fail at anything, so that's fucking crazy. And dying on most bosses resets them to full health, so you have to actually do it. No whittling them down and not thinking, you actually have to break out the gamer lane for this. Also, restoration of your health and mana is beautiful. You have potions, but hang on a second, don't formulate an idea in your head, except for Seer is the best YouTuber I've ever seen. You can think that as much as you can. Now I've got you, but forget about buying potions, finding a stockpile of them, or having to keep great track of anything. You have a dynamic supply allowance, which is based on how good your belt is. So if your max allotment is 3, you will find 3 potions and no more until you use one of them. When you do use at least one of your stock, the chance to find more activates. This was so comfortable, I didn't have to think about my bottle collection all the time or having to return to town and buy 100 of them. There's a lot of ways to make the regen systems in a game less degen, but for me, it just functioned well. Oh, you wanted mana potions? Well, take a seat, I got some bad news. Yeah, so there's no mana potions to obtain, and in Last Epoch, mana is a precious resource for every class, but it's also done better than any other ARPG I've seen, and for one reason. You can pull this shit. Yeah, the overdraw, the average Seer bank statement, overdrawn and full of negatives. Your mana is so forgiving. Hell, you can go under by as much as you want, but once in the negative, you have to wait until it's at least back to 1 to use anymore. But fortunately, there are plenty of ways to improve your mana generation through using specific abilities and such, you know, it's good. Here's something else that puts the G in GARPG or GARPG. This game got mobility right. Not only is movement speed increasing equipment easy to locate, but the special abilities dedicated to moving are refreshingly unrigid, letting you dive through the barren void of the map. Normally you get stuck trying to pull this kind of thing off, but the boundaries are rarely gross feeling in Last Epoch. What else? There's this bear, the jaw-ith bear. Clever fucks, little Diablo reference there. Well done, I smiled when I saw this. Oh yeah, there's crafting. Hey everybody, come here, look at this crafting. This looks quite complicated. What's happening here? Wait, sorry, before that, why don't we break down the item rarities first? Okay, I fucking will, alright, it's my video. So, you've got your bog standard white, blue, yellow, and gold items. That's the standard, eh? The good old. And then you have the purple. Oh, okay, a little Titan Quest E, Grim Dawn E, extra rarity with weird bonuses and potential to be better than the unchanging unique gear. Well, cool, that's fun. Then you've got sets, so wow, hey, a little Diablo-esque. Sets are pretty badass. That's cool. Okay, moving on now. And then you've got red items. Good God. Okay, yeah, cool. And actually, red items are cool. They involve the fusion between a unique with a special potential stat and a purple item. So, for example, you have this level 5 chest plate with an interesting modifier on it, but since it's level 5, it has ballsack stats on it, so you couldn't normally consider using it in the endgame. Except if you combine it with a purple chest plate with major stats, then you get the unique modifier benefits combined with the major purple item power, granting you a Chad red item. This itemization is awesome for several reasons. Firstly, every item has modifiers that you can't touch at all, located at the top end of its stats. Meanwhile, the bottom part of an item's text includes up to 4 modifiers which each can be poked and prodded by the player through the crafting system. To begin, you pick up an asphalanche, that's a portmanteau of ass and avalanche, awful writing. Anyway, you pick up all sorts of materials that you can use to make specialized pieces of gear. However, it can seem fairly shitty if you're not privy on how this works. Sorry, I'm gonna put my glasses on here and start becoming the instructor instead of the confuctor. That's a portmanteau of conductor and fuck. Great writing. Anyway, I'll try to keep this interesting enough. Firstly, you have implicit mods that you cannot touch. They come with the item, so they're here to stay, so to say. So that's the first line of RNG. After you get through that, you've got this text box, which can include up to 4 different modifiers. This is where you can use this pile of shards that you've been collecting. You have to address this value up here, called the potential, which essentially is currency you spend to upgrade the modifiers. With the use of runes and glyphs and all kinds of shit, you can essentially change, adjust, and remove all of these values, which can lead to some very unique items. It's kind of fun, actually, picking finding things that your build desperately needs, shoving things together, breaking stuff down. You can really patch up your character with just a few minutes of careful reading and planning. At first, I was wary of all these lines and buttons, but as soon as I played and just threw stuff at the system, it began to make much more sense, and now I would genuinely say it's one of my favorite systems to craft items in any game. But with so many, and I mean the dumb truck of shards and glyphs and all kinds of stuff, it becomes excessive to stop and read all the gear that drops. Which is why this game is very extensive, built-in loot filters just what you want. You can select only certain rarities, classes, item types, specific modifiers, etc. There's just too much here for me to unpack. If you want all the loot filter information, get your reading glasses on and have a go. I'll see you next year. Alright, I suppose I should touch on the story and designs of stuff. Well, there's some modern enemy designs going on, mostly a lot of purple blob enemies, blobby Kotiks running rampant. You've got bears and scorpions, and in general, the enemy design is whatever, except the Eber. I love the Eber. Look at him, it's the Eber. Fuck's an Eber? Landscapes are similarly whatever. I've seen this kind of thing before. Are these criticisms? Definitely. Are they fair? Definitely not. It's subjective. If you love what you're seeing in this game, then I'm glad. I definitely wouldn't claim that any of this is bad. It's just routine, which is a semi-disappointment considering the time travel aspects. As mentioned before, you travel through time to see places before and after some god being took a large dump all over everything. So you travel around and try to stop all the bad events of history, but unfortunately, except for a few times when there's some landmark that makes you go, oh wow, looky there, there's not much indication of what time you're actually in, except for the end of time, which leads me to the endgame discussion. Last Epoch endgame is good. I won't say god tier, I won't say trash tier, just tier. It's solid. You have monoliths, they're basically just repeats of maps you've completed. You use this mapping system to travel from island to island, getting predefined rewards and obtaining this new currency called stability that allows you to fight specific bosses. After beating these bosses, you get a permanent buff to your character in the form of choosable blessings. Since you can repeat the bosses and get new ones, these can be ground out and involve an unhealthy obsession with RNG as it picks random percentages for whatever stat it's upgrading. Still, this is a good way to keep developing your character as you play the endgame. Additionally, special areas can be accessed with randomly obtained keys which give you one-time entry into harder challenges. Completion of these areas gives you lots of loot and loads of laughs. Also, huge pain in the ass, fucking things are not easy. Overall, I was having a good time with this endgame, and I'll be back to grind out my characters, no doubt. So this feels like a natural place to call it quits. This is basically the extent of Last Epoch in its current entirety. There's plenty more I didn't go over because to describe little things in detail would put me to sleep, let alone you. Gambling, stashes, vendors, there's all that stuff here for you to find if you'd like to. And so, I feel comfortable placing Last Epoch into the running for possibly the best ARPG ever made. It isn't done, so there's more to come, and what's here right now is quite exciting. So I promise you, the viewer, a full hardcore playthrough, a complete revisit, and it will be among Path of Exile, Titan Quest, Grim Dawn, and Fate, along with many others I'm sure, in the final video in this little series of mine, that series with 3 E's this week for all the extra work I'll have to do to play every ARPG ever made. This has been Seer, and I'll see ya next week for some more sincere bullshit. I suck.